All right, let's dive into a question that sounds so simple on the surface, but trust me, it quickly spirals into a huge philosophical mystery. What in the world isn't an object?
Seriously, just for a second, look around you. Your chair, your phone, the mug on your desk, they're all objects. It feels completely obvious. It kind of seems like our whole world is just made of objects. But is that really the end of the story?
You know, that gut feeling actually has a name. It's called the umbrella view. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. The idea that the word object is this giant umbrella that covers absolutely everything that exists. A planet, a pebble, even an idea or a number. They're all just objects, which would mean the category non-object is totally empty.
But this is exactly where philosophers pump the brakes. Because a category that's supposed to contain everything sets off this massive red flag. They call it the everything problem.
Think about it this way. The whole reason we use categories is to draw lines, to make useful distinctions. If I say something is a mammal, I'm also telling you it's not a reptile. But if I tell you something is an object, and literally everything is an object, well, what have I really told you? Absolutely nothing. The term loses all its power to carve up reality. It just becomes useless.
The brilliant logician Gottlob Frege really hit the nail on the head with this. He argued that the concept of an object is so fundamental, it's, quote, too simple to admit of logical analysis. You can't break it down any further. It's kind of like trying to define the word is. And that challenge is what kicks off our whole investigation here.
So, if we can't define it head-on, we've got to get clever. To unlock this puzzle, we need to flip the script and ask a much more interesting question.
Instead of asking what an object is, let's go on a hunt for what it isn't. This is what philosophers call the contrast question. Is there anything out there that qualifies as a non-object? Because if we can find just one example, then suddenly the category object snaps back into focus and actually means something again.
Okay, our first major clue comes from a really basic division we see in the world, the difference between things and the ways things are.
So check this out. On one side, you have objects, like a specific rock. It's a concrete thing, it's in one particular spot, and it has certain properties. But on the other side, you've got the properties themselves, like hardness or redness. These are abstract, right? You can't touch hardness. And the color red can be on a stop sign, a strawberry, a fire truck. It can be in a million places at once. So objects have properties, while properties are had by objects.
And just like that, we've got a whole class of potential non-objects. The color green isn't a thing in the same way a green leaf is. The quality of kindness isn't something you can put in your pocket. And the itchiness on your arm isn't the same as the arm itself. These are all properties, and they're our first big candidates for non-objects.
Now that's a pretty solid answer. But it's not the only game in town. What if we shift our whole perspective? Let's look at a second clue that completely reframes the problem. This leads us to a totally different way of carving up the world. It's not based on substance, but on subjectivity. This is our second clue, the fundamental distinction between an it and a you. And this framework kind of splits into two paths. In the first one, you can divide the world into two exclusive teams. A non-object is a subject. That's anything with consciousness, with a point of view, like you. Everything else, from an unfeeling rock to a chair, is an object. Clean and simple. But the second view is more fluid. Here, an object is just whatever a subject experiences. So when you feel cold water, the coldness is the object of your experience. But in this view, you can also become an object for someone else whenever they're looking at you or thinking about you. Okay, we've followed two very different trails of clues, each leading to a very different kind of suspect. So what's the final verdict here? What isn't an object?
Well, the truth is, there isn't one single answer. And honestly, that is the answer. The whole point of asking what isn't an object isn't to find one specific culprit. It's to realize that we have different philosophical tools, different lenses we can use to make sense of the world in different ways. So to wrap up our investigation, if you're using that thing versus way things are lens, then a non-object is a property, like the color blue or the shape of a rectangle. But if you're using the consciousness lens, then the ultimate non-object is a subject, the you who is actually doing the experiencing. Both are perfectly valid ways to bring meaning back to the word object.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. We've seen that properties and abstract concepts can be considered non-objects. So if things like justice or love or courage aren't physical objects you can hold in your hand, does that make them any less real, any less powerful in our world? Something to chew on. Thanks for watching.